Hola students, welcome back to another video. As you can see, our focus is still on los mandatos, which is commands. Now, we have been looking on both the affirmative as well as the negative commands. Remember, affirmative, you tell somebody to do something, and negative, you tell them not to. Please also be reminded that the commands can either be familiar, polite, or plural. Let us quickly revise the affirmative commands. So for the familiar, the AR verbs would end with the A, and the ER and the IR would end with the E, whereas for the polite, the AR verbs would end with the E, whereas the ER and the IR would end with an A. For the plural, the AR verbs would end with an EN, whereas the ER and the IR would end with an AN. Now let us quickly revise the negative commands. This is telling somebody not to do something. So of course we'd start off with the no and then add the endings. So for the familiar, the AR verb would end with an ES, whereas the ER and the IR verbs would end with an AS. For the negative, the AR verbs would end with an E, whereas the ER or the IR verbs would end with an A. And then for the plural form, the AR verbs would end with EN, whereas the ER or IR verbs would end with an AN. Vamos a continuar. Now, we're going to be focusing on keeping the commands short or making them short. So instead of saying take out the garbage, you're going to learn how to say take it out. Instead of saying look at the mangoes, you're going to learn how to say look at them. To shorten the commands, we're going to need the object pronouns. We have me, and this means me or to me. For example, call me. We also have te, which means you or to you. So for example, you, be quiet. We have lo. Now there are two meanings for the word lo. So lo can be used to replace the word him, and we can also use it to replace items or articles with the article el. We also have la, and the la also has two meanings. So la can mean her, and we can also use it to replace items with the article la, such as la falda. Now we also have le, which means to him or to her. Example, write it to him. We also have nos, meaning us. For example, look at us, right? Next up we have the object pronoun them. Now them can either be los or las. And then we have les, which means to them. So these are all the object pronouns, so ensure that you make note of them. But how exactly are we going to use them to shorten the commands in Spanish? We're going to follow these two steps. Step 1, you're going to put the object pronoun at the end of the command verb. And then step 2, you're going to add an accent to the third vowel. So to do that, you're going to count all the vowels starting from the end of the verb. And you're only going to count the vowels. You're going to ignore the other letters. So let us do an example together. So we have cocina el pollo, meaning cook the chicken. So in short, we could simply say cook it. So we're going to follow the two steps. We're going to put on the object pronoun at the end of the command verb, and then we're going to add an accent to the third vowel. So let us begin with step 1. Remember, the command is cocina el pollo, meaning cook the chicken. So we want to shorten it to say cook it. Now remember, it can either be lo or la. Now chicken is el pollo. So which one would we use?
A few moments later.
If you said lo, then you are correct. So remember, the full command is cook the chicken, cocina el pollo, but we want to shorten it and say cook it. So remember, it in Spanish can either be lo or la, but because it is el pollo, we would have to use lo because it is masculine. So we have added the lo to the end of the command. So we have cocina, then we put on the lo. So far we have cocinalo. Entonces, this is really all you have to do for step 1. Just put on the correct or the appropriate object pronoun at the end of the command verb. Now let's move on to step 2, where we add an accent. Now I want for you to note that we have to add an accent to the shortened version of the command because we want to maintain the pronunciation. Now, the accent that you're going to add to the word, it can only be added to a vowel. However, you cannot just add it to any of the vowels from out of the word, right? You have to add it to the third vowel. So you're going to count starting from the end of the verb, 1, 2, 3, and you're only going to count the vowels. So if the letter is not a vowel, you are not going to count it. So let us do step 2 with our example. Remember, for step 1, we have added the lo, so we have cocinalo, right? So now we're going to add on the accent to the third vowel, and we're going to start counting from the end of the verb, and we are only counting the vowels. So I want for you to count with me. So we are starting from the O, so that is 1. Notice we have the L, but the L is not a vowel, so we skip that out. And then we move on, we see another vowel, we put 2. The next letter is an N, it's not a vowel, so we skip that out. And then the next letter is the letter I, and that is indeed a vowel, so that would be our third vowel. So that is where we would place our accent, over the third vowel. So let's count another time. So we have the letter O, that's 1, we skip the L, we go to A, that's 2, we skip the letter N, then we go to the I, which is our third vowel. So the accent would go over the I, so we get cocinalo. So let's do it another time.
Let's do it again.
So we're just going to follow our 2 steps. We're going to attach the pronoun to the end of the command verb, and then we're going to put the accent on the third vowel. So we have our command, cocina el pollo, meaning cook the chicken. So to shorten it, we would say cook it. But remember, it in Spanish can either be lo or la. Now in this example, we are talking about el pollo. So we would use the L because it is masculine. So we would attach the L to the end of cocina. So we end up with cocinalo. Now step 2, we're going to add on the accent to the third vowel. Remember, you start counting from the end of the verb and you only count the vowels. So we start from the O, then we move on to the A, and then finally we have the letter I. So we would add on the accent over the I, so we get cocinalo. Let's do another one together.
Another one.
Remember, we're following the 2 steps. We're attaching the pronoun to the end of the command verb, and then we're adding the accent to the third vowel. So for this example, we have venda la casa, meaning sell the house. So we want to shorten it by saying sell it. But remember, it can either be lo or la. In this example, we're talking about la casa. So therefore, we would use la because it is feminine. So we would attach the la to the end of the command. So we get vendala. Step 2 is where we're going to add the accent to the third vowel. Remember, we're only counting the vowels. So let's count together. And we're also starting from the end of the verb. So the first letter is the A, that's a vowel, so we have 1. The next letter is the L, that's not a vowel, so we don't count it. Next up we have E, that's a vowel, so that's number 2. Next up we have D, that's not a vowel, so we skip it. N, that's also not a vowel, so we skip it. Then we finally have an E, and that is a vowel, so that is our third vowel, so that's where we would add the accent. So we would get vendala. Let's do a final example together. Here I have lava los platos, meaning wash the plates. So to shorten it, we would say wash them. So remember, them can either be los or las. En este ejemplo, estamos hablando de los platos. We're talking about los platos. Therefore, we would use los because it is masculine. So we would attach the los directly to the end of the command. So we would get lavalos. Now let's do step 2 together. This is where we're going to add the accent to the third vowel. Remember, we're going to start counting from the end of the verb, and we're only going to be counting the vowels. So the first letter that we have there is an S. S is not a vowel, so we don't count it. Next up we have the letter O. So that would be number 1. Next up we have L. L is not a vowel, so we don't count it. Next up, we have the letter A. That is a vowel, so that would be number 2. Next up, we have V. V is not a vowel, so we would skip that as well. Then we have the letter A. That is a vowel. And this is our third vowel, so that's where we would add our accent. So we get lavalos. Entonces, estudiantes. As long as you follow these 2 steps, then you should be fine. So all you have to do is to put the object pronoun at the end of the command verb, and then you're going to add an accent to the 3rd vowel. Remember, you're counting from the end of the verb and you're only counting the vowels. So I want for you to try these 4 for yourselves, right? I want for you to write the shortened version of these commands and then upload them to Google Classroom. We will discuss this some more in tomorrow's class. Adios.
Bye bye. Bye bye.